PennsPeakRadio.com.
Ian Anderson, known throughout the world of rock music as the flute and voice of Jethro Tull. And after, so far, I believe, like 4 solo albums, Jethro Tull releasing 30-some studio and live albums, selling more than 60 million copies. Certainly a pleasure to have you on the show. And this coming Sunday, October 24th here at Penn's Peak, a big night for Ian Anderson fans. And Ian, I don't know, maybe just a little overview of what people can expect on Sunday night.
Well, expectations exist only to be confounded. And the reason I do solo shows, usually in the second half of the year, and have done for quite a few years with a lot of shows with orchestras and string quartets and acoustic concerts and electric concerts, it's just a chance to stretch out with the repertoire a little bit.
Sure.
Not to get away from doing Jethro Tull music that everybody knows and perhaps loves, but just to broaden the depth of the catalogue that we choose from. So we pick some more obscure songs and odd songs from the Jethro Tull early years, particularly, and then there's a few of the older songs maybe done up in a different way, familiar songs that perhaps are given a different context, and then couple of solo tracks and 3 or 4 new songs too. So it's really a bit of a mixture of everything, an eclectic soup, cunningly concocted in the chef's kitchen.
I am so looking forward to it. It's been an interesting journey, I'm sure, from your first Tull performance at London's famous Marquee Club, and I did read somewhere that the Marquee Club, I don't know if they're looking to do it or they already have put together a 90-minute documentary. Have you heard anything on that?
Well, yes, I've got a feeling I might have been involved in it. It's one of those fascinations, I suppose, that later generations have for those formative years in the history of contemporary rock music, and it was a very productive period back in the second half of the 60s.
Absolutely.
Apart from the slight distractions of people going to San Francisco with flowers in their hair, the other hippie ditties of the time, it was the era in which what we call classic rock today it was born, and it's a kind of a bit of a pilgrimage to the past to look at the influence of some of those venues like the Marquee Club, which in some ways echoed the position of the Cavern Club in Liverpool some years before, when the Beatles and the other Mersey beat boom bands first started. So the Marquee was one of the most, if not the most important of the London clubs for the new progressive blues and burgeoning rock scene back in the latter part of the 60s.
And for those of you, just a little background, bands like the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, of course, Jethro Tull, Peter and Gordon, all have played there. And like you touched on, had to be an interesting scene.
Well, it was, and on nights when I wasn't busy doing anything, even when I did have some hair to wash, I would go down to the Marquee Club on my nights off and hang around the backstage door and carry in the guitar amps for Yes or Spooky Tooth or King Crimson in order to pose as a temporary roadie and get access into the venue, and then kind of hide out in the toilets until they officially opened the doors, and then I was in without paying because I didn't have any money. But then, of course, about 6 weeks later, we were the headline act, and people were offering to carry our act.
Now, yourself, I mean, you played with certainly an eclectic bunch, and yourself and let me say Martin, I mean, you guys remain where you've always been. I mean, right there at the center of Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull. I mean, absolutely incredible musicians. I mean, Martin has always been there.
Well, he wasn't there at the beginning. It was Mick Abrahams was the original Jethro Tull guitar player. Martin joined after about a year when he replaced Mick and became, I guess, the guitar player who was most associated with Jethro Tull's early success in the USA, because Martin was the only one they saw. And the first album was a kind of a fairly simple, homespun, blues-influenced affair called This Was Jethro Tull, which is aptly titled, and knowingly titled, because even at the time we were recording that, I knew that the next batch of songs were going to be outside the box as far as blues was concerned. They were going to be influenced by classical music and folk music and world music and other stuff that I was, interested in and had been for a while. But that in part led to the breakup with Mick Abrahams, since he was really a blues guitar player and he didn't particularly relish or find easy the musical choices that I was wanting to make.
Certainly. You picked up the flute when guitar playing was somewhat unfulfilling.
Well, it was unfulfilling when I first heard Eric Clapton playing back in about 67, maybe back into 66, and he first appeared on the scene with John Mayall's Blues Breakers in the London scene, and he was clearly so far ahead of everybody else that I realized that my guitar playing was pretty naive and uninformed compared to his facility and his knowledge of a variety of blues-based music forms. So he was really the leader of the pack in terms of the new breed of actual really able to play guitarists, because there were a few of us who I suppose could play a bit, but not in his league.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we began to hear about some of the other hotshots who were down in the London area, people like Peter Green, who was the first guitarist of Fleetwood Mac, and, of course, Jimmy Page and Richie Blackmore, who were part of the session scene down there. And really, being a third-rate guitar player didn't seem to me like a recipe for future success, so I thought maybe I should find another instrument to play that preferably Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton couldn't play. And indeed, for no particularly good reason, when I traded in my guitar, I spied a shiny silvery flute on the wall and thought, that'll do. With, of course, no idea how to play it, and it didn't come with an instruction book.
Unbelievable.
Mind you, these days, neither does your iPod.
Let it
to figure it out.
Let it be known that Ian Anderson is a very talented musician, though, as well, and there's not many instruments that he can play. But I do have to ask you one thing, and it was at the 1978 Madison Square Garden gig, Heavy Tours. I was there, and I just still want to know: can you still play the flute on one leg?
Well, that's actually not that difficult to do. A little.
I can't stand on one leg and play anything.
It's just one of those things that comes very naturally, and it came naturally to me for some odd reason back in the earliest days of our Marquee Club shows back in February of 1968, and
Unreal.
Just something I started doing. I really don't remember how or why it happened. I used to play harmonica standing on one leg, and then I switched to playing the flute standing on one leg. So it just came naturally, whatever it was. And it's that's not so difficult. But the thing is, it was never one of those things I was engaged in from start to finish of a performance. It was just here and there, and of course people notice it, write about it. It became the unofficial trademark of Jethro Tull was the flute player who stands on one leg.
That's right.
But of course, it was just a few seconds here and a few seconds there, a couple of times during the show, and as it is today, it's just something I do as a little bit of a trademark thing. And, we think of some of the performers I've enjoyed watching over the years, people like Joe Cocker, who famously would windmill his arms around, practically looking like some deranged puppet. He had a particular performance style on stage, which I don't think he practiced in front of a mirror whilst watching MTV.
Sure.
It's just something he did.
Sure.
It just caught on. He was quite unself-conscious and natural, and cut him out as being different from the other singers of the day.
Absolutely.
In which he was even uglier than I was.
Yes.
He had to do something to catch people's attention.
You live on a farm, Southwest England, married to the same woman for 25 years. You have two children, and I've read that they're in the music TV business as well. Married to the same woman for 25 years. How's that been, Ian?
Well, it's actually 34 years.
Oh, 34. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's it's just one of those permanent things in life where you have a part of your life that is very much anchored and grounded,
Sure.
which is good when the rest of your time you're sitting in sleazy motels,
Isn't it
and
Yeah.
juddering aeroplanes fighting their way through turbulence across the North Atlantic or whatever. So it's nice to have some things that are fixed.
Absolutely.
And that's a good feeling when it's time to go home and share some time with family and friends. And Christmas, of course, is always one of those occasions when it's kind of sacrosanct. If I suddenly announced I had a Christmas tour of North American venues, dressed in a Santa Claus outfit and playing Jingle Bells, I think my wife and family would get a little upset. But the closest I come is usually doing some Christmas shows just before Christmas, and I have some dates in December in Italy, and then we finish up in our most famous of the bastions of the Church of England, the headquarters, spiritually speaking, which is in Canterbury. And Canterbury Cathedral is a ancient cathedral, which is as all of them are, in some state of disrepair and needing constant funding. And so we're doing a charity concert there.
That's great.
Which is already sold out.
That's great.
And we have a show there on just the week before Christmas, and that's something I do every year. Although don't get me wrong, I'm not a Christian. I'm about as Christian as Ted Nugent is a vegetarian.
That's a good analogy. It's just amazing the scope that yourself, Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull has on their worldwide audience. It's amazing, and it's certainly a testament to you. Off the website, guys, you can find a lot of great information, jethrotull.com. On there, you'll see as well, you're a cat lover, and I'm not just talking about domestic cats, but the preservation of the endangered small cat species, which I learned a little bit about a couple of weeks ago when we talked to Anne and, doing some research and trying to format some questions here. Big cat lover and the endangered small cat species. You're a big supporter of that. Well, yes, I'm a big cat lover. I'm not a big cat lover, if we get the difference there, because now the big cats, they get lots of attention, especially when they bite the head off Roy. And big cats in captivity are a very sad and awful sight, and I, actually, frankly, don't have a lot of sympathy for people who train wild animals to, for showbiz and entertainment purposes, and then try to dress it up after the fact as being some act of conservation. Mm-hmm. Clearly isn't, and it's a complete bit of hogwash. So I'm sure Siegfried and Roy are perfectly nice people, but very misguided in their attempts to seek fame and fortune at the expense of rather imprisoned creatures who really do belong in their natural habitat. I agree.
So, with small cats, they're kind of a little different in the sense that nobody pays that much attention to them because they often they resemble rather our own domestic cats. The sort of size and weight, and they can be very pretty to look at, but of course very fearful of humans and tend to be often nocturnal and hardly seen. So they don't make good zoo exhibits, which is why you don't see them in your local zoo, happily. But they do exist out there in the wild, and they're, I guess from the point of view of ecotourism, if you're lucky enough to see some of the beautiful small wildcat species, then it's a great asset out there for all of us. But otherwise, they deserve a little help and support, just like the Christian Church. I don't have a furry tail and 4 legs, but I support cats, and same with my occasional support of the AIDS and the gay community and issues like that. I think it's nice to be supportive of people and causes which you personally don't have an obvious direct link with.
Sure.
I think that's one of the good things about human giving. That all that we ever do is just give within the confines of our own backyard. We don't really broaden our own experience, and we don't bring or enrich the experience of others who might benefit from some help. And so I think my interest in some of the more oddball things is not. It's not difficult for me to explain, even sometimes there seems to be a bit of a contradiction going on.
It's you'll find that information too, all this that we're talking about on the jethrotull.com website. I have to ask you too, and in reading, I don't know how long it's been, but how's that finger? Because you had a splint on your finger due to a cat taking a cat out or something. Oh,
I just broke a finger in the middle of the night in the dark when I was grabbing for a small animal who decided it wanted to go out and then changed its mind when it realized it was cold and raining and tried to crash between my legs up the stairs, and I managed to break a finger, which is not very good. But especially since I had to fly the day after to Minsk in Belarus,
wow,
a former USSR country, and so we had to improvise a finger splint, and I had to quickly adapt one of my flutes to allow me to play it with my finger in a splint.
Now, is it still in a splint? Is it still in a splint right now?
Oh no! This was over a year ago.
Okay, over a year ago.
It works pretty well again now.
Okay, all right.
Curiously and coincidentally, Martin Barr broke the same finger on the same hand just a few months later.
No kidding.
So he went through the same thing about 6 months after I did, and we both had some pretty dedicated physiotherapy and efforts to try and get things happening again as soon as safely possible, because the last thing you want to do is end up with some permanent degree of damage if you make your living using your fingers. So if you're like me, a musician or an expensive gynecologist, all your fingers working carefully.
That's right. Up close and personal with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. Now, I also read and know that you stay on top of things. The world certainly is ever changing. I certainly, with what I do and have done the past 29 years, try to stay on top of current events of the world. You're on the road, and I know you're very much there on top of a lot of things that are going on. And I guess you continue to do that to this day.
Well, it's always been my practice at the end of a show to get back as soon as possible to my lonely hotel room and switch on the TV and get a glimpse of what's going on in the world. In the days before rolling news like CNN or Fox or BBC or Sky or the other channels that these days give us through cable and satellite access worldwide to what's going on, back in the days when I first came to the USA, it was... it really just was a little bit of late-night news followed by Dick Cavett.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Joey Bishop.
Yeah, right.
So, I used to just come back and try to... And watching those programs, if you're a foreigner like me and you come to the USA for the first or second or third time, a way of getting to grips with American culture is actually to watch those late-night talk shows, because... although they are, obviously arch entertainment, sometimes of a rather facile sort, it's a real glimpse into the way things are, what makes people laugh, what makes people interested, and the pace of it all as well. And I regret that my failing, in spite of that, was to appear on David Letterman's show in his earlier days when... without doing some homework to see who this guy was. And
I missed that.
And it would have benefited me enormously to have known a little bit more about David Letterman. He's not one of the easy guys to work with.
No, he's not. I mean, he's everybody thinks he's easy seeing him on TV. He's not. I missed that. What year was that?
Oh, goodness me, I don't know, back in the probably late 80s somewhere.
I'll be darned. I missed that.
But I've done his show a couple of times since, but his first time was... I've seen it replayed, actually. I mean, you can find it on the dreaded YouTube.
Yeah.
David Letterman interview of that
right.
But it didn't look as bad as it felt at the time. I did not hit it off, for sure.
Well, I hope we're hitting it off. That's all I know. I'm trying my damnedest here, let me tell you. So there's been...
You're doing fine, and so am I, because, when you get older... You learn. There's no point in going on and being cantankerous or being irritable.
Absolutely.
To cheer people up, make people feel good, keep them interested, and tell them to keep their eyes on the road while they're driving their car.
How about it? Well,
whatever they're doing when they listen to stuff like this.
You have done just that, and obviously there's been a number of books written on Jethro Tull, and I don't know. I'll point this to you. Is there a favorite out there on Jethro Tull from Ian Anderson? Is there a favorite?
Well, I think most of the things that have been written about us are substantially accurate. I mean, most of it these days, and that's the great blessing of the Internet, is there's a tremendous amount of information out there, and most of it is pretty accurate, and I'm sure it applies to most other people too. But there is, of course, the danger that when you go to Wikipedia in particular, that you will sometimes fall prey to the pranks of others who go on and modify entries, and
Sure.
for a few I guess a couple of weeks. Apparently on my Wikipedia entry, someone had added a line saying that I was a Seattle Mariners fan. and I had journalists told me about this, and I said, no, you must have got it wrong. But of course, when I looked, somebody had put this in. I suppose some idiot who just thought it was amusing. And I didn't have the faintest idea who or what Seattle Mariners were. I thought it was a seafood restaurant in the state. Anyway, don't worry, I quickly removed it last week.
That's amazing. Now, are you reading anything now? I mean, Ian Anderson likes to read?
Yeah, I read the CIA website a lot.
There you go. There you are.
The CIA fact-finding website is a tremendous source of information if you're ever thinking about visiting another country, or just finding out about another country. They maintain a really brilliant website, the CIA Fact Book, which is a constantly updated look at every country of the world, including the United States and the United Kingdom, along with places like Belarus or Armenia or Kazakhstan or wherever it might be. And it's a fascinating source of information encapsulated, in a few pages for each country, which I go to very often, because when I'm traveling to unusual places, even maybe places I've been to before but kind of forgotten some of the statistics, it's a tremendous way of not only educating yourself, but practically so if you're a traveler like I am.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
With a carbon footprint the size of Al Gore.
I think you're a wealth of information as well. That would be my personal point of view, which is incredible. But a few years ago, and I just have a few more, but a few years ago, I think it was 2006, 2007, you were awarded. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very intellectual rock star. Let me, if I can use rock star as a cliche, but a few years ago you were awarded a doctorate in literature, an international achievement award in music. I mean, it had to be a good feeling there. Did it come as a surprise?
Well, I think any peer group award is always perhaps a surprise, but also generously appreciated, because. Sometimes I suppose we think we don't quite earn these things, but if you're recognized, whether it's in the form of some royal award like an MBE or an OBE or a knighthood or whatever it might be, or it's some kind of industry award, Grammy, or all these things are nice to get, but it doesn't necessarily mean you go out and order some new some personal or business cards to add some letters after your name. Life goes on as normal. But
I so agree with you.
Yes, of course, it's nice to have. But in the case of being awarded a doctorate in literature, I have to put it in perspective that for all I know, Ozzy Osbourne has got a doctorate in pharmacology.
Oh, okay.
Awarded to him for his experiments with dangerous chemicals or whatever. But it's put it into the rock and roll context. It just means I've written a few lyrics and sold a few records. So very nice to have. In fact, I've been offered another one next year, but I keep unfortunately my diary clashes with the graduation ceremony of another university. I keep having to say, any chance we could do this the year after? So yes, I shall be a double doctorate in literature.
Very nice.
Down the line, and I don't know whether anybody else out there is a double D size, but it's
my wife is.
It's nice to have.
Yeah, my wife is. So two more. What does Ian Anderson listen to? Let's say you're home on the farm and you have that car with a CD player in it. What does Ian Anderson listen to?
Wow, there you go. Well, it's actually all my iPod, and has been since the invention of the iPod, or even the MP3 players that preceded the iPod. I'm working professionally in music. You tend to have to keep abreast of technology, so digital recording, which actually goes back to the 80s, is something that I've always had to cope with, and so digital files like MP3s, they just came along and for me replaced the CDs and the vinyl and all the other stuff. They're not necessarily great quality, but they're convenient, and that's what I guess makes them so much the way in which most of us these days do listen to music. So yeah, it's all currently on my fourth or fifth or sixth iPod or whatever it is I currently have, and it's a variety of stuff. Very often the music that I listened to when I was a teenager, which happily these days is re-released and you can buy on iTunes, and indeed I have. So I have a huge collection of legally acquired and downloaded music, which is both the music of my youth as well as some of the stuff that I might hear today from other parts of the world and some younger musicians and bands as well. But it tends to be a very eclectic mixture.
That's very nice. Last question. You're certainly a businessman. You're an incredible artist. In so many ways, an inspiration to a whole lot of people, myself included. How does, and I think maybe we just touched base on this, but how does Ian Anderson relax?
Usually by trying to get a little fresh air. Living out in the countryside, it's nice to be able to walk around your garden and across the fields and through the woods, and take a couple of cats for a walk, since dogs are rather smelly and big and have dirty feet, and cats are rather more elegant and tend to look after themselves better. So they come for walks with me, and we contemplate life and the universe and the prospect of an early bed. There
you are. It's been an absolute pleasure, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, and taking quite a few moments here to be with us here on Penn's Peak Radio. And I wish you a safe trip here to Penn's Peak. I think you're going to be very impressed with the venue, the staff here, and it's kind of like been a big wow factor for me on my show. And again, thank you, sir.
Well, great to talk to you, too. We'll look forward to being with you before too long. So take care and see you soon.
Ian Anderson, safe trip. Thank you very much, and we'll see you Sunday.
All right, brilliant. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
PennsPeakRadio.com